Hello, MBA Business Finance. This is Professor Hassey. It's our week 2 update video. In this video being recorded on Sunday, June 19th, I have posted assignment number 1, which is due a week from today, June 26th, and I'll be reviewing that assignment in this video. Secondly, we'll have one last discussion of the time value of money and getting ready for risk and return in our week 3 of our summer session. Thank you for all your postings of the portfolios. I have also posted my version of the portfolio, and we're going to take a look at that right now. Okay, here's our Blackboard site and a couple of new additions to this Blackboard site. In Zoom and YouTube links, I have a resource video about the D&B Hoovers database in our Wilson Library. As being online students, you still have access to all the data available to you for research in the library. And we use a database in financial management and finance called D&B Hoovers to look up financial data of all kinds of companies. And you will be using this during the course of our class. Here is that link to explain how to use it if you've not already used it in other classes. In addition to that, in the week 2 file folder, you'll see a sample of our portfolio, my portfolio. And just so to make sure we're all on the same page about the format, here's that spreadsheet. And notice I have everything totaling $100,000. Then I take in the share column, I take the stock price and divide it into the investment to get the number of shares. The actual number looks like this, but then as I ask to round to the nearest whole dollar, and there we go. And also our Dow, S&P 500, and NASDAQ index values as of June 10th. So now we're all set up to track during the course at a few other times during our next 7 weeks of our class. So that's what the sample portfolio looks like, and all of you did a pretty good job. Some of you need to correct it a little bit, but please do so and you'll get your points back that I took away. So there's that. And also you'll now find in the assignments and examinations file folder, the assignment number 1, your work to be done this coming week, due next Sunday. Now, a point of note, the due date is Sunday, June 26th, but if you need extra days or want some extra time to complete your work, please send me an email and I will make sure you have an extension of your work. In our summer session, the due dates are not that important, as long as you get your work posted at a reasonable time. So if you need extra time, just send me a request for an extension and I will grant that for each assignment during the next 8 weeks of our course. The assignment number 1 is called Introduction to Financial Management, and it's asking questions about our first 2 weeks of our class, the overview of finance and time value of money. So I give you 2 files, both the same work. One is a Word doc file and the other is a PDF file. When you've completed your file or files, because some of the work on assignment 1 is doing some present value and future value calculations, you might want to use a spreadsheet for those calculations. So submit your work files back to this file folder and I will return them next week with a grade on them. If you have any questions or concerns about how to load the files to Blackboard or anything about the assignments per se, please feel free to let me know. Here is assignment number 1, and it's a series, it's 2 different types of questions. It's short answer questions right here, and I give the chapter that it's from. This is chapter 2, excuse me, that should be chapter 2. The questions of the financial markets, and then some multiple choice questions. And then the final 2 questions concern itself with the time value of money. Some calculations that I need you to do to find the correct answer for these 4 questions. And then a real world application. This is an essay, maybe maybe a page long. Give me an example from your professional or personal life of the present or future value of money. For example, an example would be a mortgage. That's an example of a present value of money. You're calculating through your mortgage a monthly amount that you have to pay for the life of the payback of that borrowing. So give me an example and how it relates to time value of money in this example in question 8. So that's the assignment. A couple writing questions, a couple calculating questions, a couple multiple choice questions. And so that's our work for this first week of 500D. Now another video just highlighting again time value of money, interest, and debt. Let's watch this video.
Whenever we talk about money, the amount of money is not the only thing that matters. What also matters is when you have to get or when you have to give the money. So to think about this, or to make it a little bit more concrete, let's assume that we live in a world that if you put money in a bank, you are guaranteed 10% interest, 10% risk-free interest in a bank. And this is high by historical standards, but it'll make our math easy. So let's just assume that you can always get 10% risk-free interest in the bank. Now, given that, let me throw out scenarios and have you think about which of these that you would most want. So I could give you $100 right now. That's option 1. I could, in 1 year, instead of giving you the $100 immediately, in 1 year, I could give you $109. And then in 2 years, this is kind of option 3, I'd be willing to give you $120. So your choice is, someone walks up you up to the street. I can give you a $100 bill now, a $109 bill, or not a $109 bill, $109 in a year, or $120 2 years from now. And you know in the back of your mind you can get 10% risk-free interest. So given that you don't have an immediate need for money, we're assuming that this money you will save, that you don't have to, that you don't have a bill to pay immediately. Which of these things are the most desirable? Which of these would you most want to have? Well, if you just cared about the absolute value or the absolute amount of the money, you would say, hey, look, $120, that's the biggest amount of money. I'm going to take that one because that's just the biggest number. But you probably have in the back of your mind, well, hey, I'm getting that later, so there's maybe something I'm losing out there. And you'd be right. You'd be losing out on the opportunity to get the 10% risk-free interest if you were to get the money earlier. And if you wanted to compare them directly, the thought process would be, well, let's see, if I took option 1, if I got the $100, and if you were to put it in the bank, what would that grow? What would that grow to based on that 10% risk-free interest? Well, after 1 year, 10% of $100 is $10. So you would get $10 in interest. So after 1 year, your entire savings in the bank will now be $110. So just doing that little exercise, we actually see that $100 given now, put it in the bank at 10% risk-free, will actually turn into $110 in a year from now, which is better than the $109 1 year from now. So given this scenario, or given this kind of situation or this option, you would rather do this than do this. You're better a year from now, you're better off by $1. What about 2 years from now? Well, if you take that $100, after 1 year it becomes $110. Then 10% of 110 is $11. So you want to add $11 to it. And so it becomes $121. So once again, you're better off taking the $100, investing it in the bank, risk-free, 10% per year. It turns into $121. That is a better situation than just someone guaranteeing you to give the $120 in 2 years. Once again, you are better off by $1. And so this idea that not just the amount matters, but when you get it, this idea is called the time value of money. Time value of money. Or another way to think about it is, think about what the value of this money is over time, given some expected interest rate. And when you do that, you can compare this money to equal amounts of money at some future date. Now, another way of thinking about the time value, or I guess another related concept to the time value of money, is the idea of present value. Present value. And maybe I'll talk about present and future value. So present and future value. Future value. So given this assumption, this 110, this 10% assumption, if someone were to ask you what is the present value of $121 2 years in the future, they're essentially asking you, so what is the present value? So the present, PV stands for present value. So what is the present value of $121 2 years in the future? That's equivalent to asking what type of money or what amount of money would you have to put into the bank risk-free over the next 2 years to get $121? And we know that. If you put $100 in the bank for 2 years at 10% risk-free, you would get $121. So the present value here, the present value of $121 is the $100. Or another way to think about present and future value, if someone were to ask, what is the future value? So what is the future value of this $100 in 1 year? So in 1 year, well, if you get 10% in the bank, that's guaranteed. Its future value is $110. After 2 years, its 2-year future value is $121. And so with that in mind, let me give you one slightly more interesting problem. So let's say we're going to assume this the whole time. That makes our math easy, 10% risk-free interest. And let's say that someone says that they're willing to give us $65 in 1 year. And we were to ask ourselves, what is the present value of this? So what is the present value? What is the present value of this? So remember, the present value is just asking you what amount of money that if you were to put it in the bank at this risk-free interest would be equivalent to this $65. Which of these two are equivalent to you? And so you would say, well, look, whatever amount of money that is, let's call that x. Whatever amount of money that is times, if I grow it by 10%, that's literally I'm taking x plus 10% x plus, let me write it this way, plus 10% times x. Or let me make it clearer this way. X plus 10% of x should be equal to our $65. If I take the amount, I get 10% of that amount over the year. That should be equal to $65. And this is the same thing as a 1x, or we could say that 1x plus 10% is the same thing as 0.10x is equal to 65. Or you add these two. 1.10x is equal to 65. And if you want to solve for the actual amount of the present value here, you would just divide both sides by the 1.10. And so you get x is equal to, let me do it this way, be a little bit more clear about it. So let's divide both sides by 1 point. And really, that trailing 0 doesn't matter. We're not really too worried about the precision here because this is actually exactly 10%. So this is going to be, these cancel out. And x is going to be equal to, let me get the calculator out. X is going to be equal to 65 divided by 1.1. $59.09, rounding it. So x is equal to $59.09, which was the present value of $65 in 1 year. Or another way to think about it is, if you wanted to know what the future value of $59.09 is in 1 year, assuming that 10% interest, you would get $65.
Okay, that was kind of a summation of the definitions of present and future value, but naturally we will use spreadsheets to do our calculations. Calculators, as you know, this video is a little bit old, but we would now use spreadsheets to do our calculations. More on that as we move forward in our class. So again, assignment number 1 this week, chapter 6, risk and return, and we'll see you all with our video on either Monday or Tuesday of this coming week to introduce week 3. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you then. Bye-bye.